Let's take you first to Chanley Painter, who is live in Boise, Idaho. Bombshell testimony, we understand, but also I was listening to Ted's show, and you two are providing amazing coverage to hear that the person on the stand is also, I guess, causing a lot of tears in the courtroom, Chanley.
That's right, Judge Ashley. Summer Shiflet, who showed up inside the courtroom for the first time yesterday, she is the designated representative for victim Tylee Ryan in this case, so she could be in the courtroom before she testified. And she was called today, a late morning. Right now on the stand is a detective from the police department, but this is her arriving earlier this morning. I caught up with her as she left at lunch. She had no comment to say to the media, but she took the stand. Emotions ran high inside the courtroom, from Vallow Daybell wiping tears, Summer Shiflet wiping tears, and the gallery, who included the uncle of Vallow Daybell and some cousins, as well as family of Tylee and JJ. And she begins her testimony talking about confronting Lori in February 2020 about where the missing children were, her children were, and Lori says, "I know where they are, that they're safe." And Summer says, "Lori lied to me." And then a phone call, a jail phone call, a video call was played from June 24th, 2020. It was, we've heard the one from Colby. This one from Summer, it's like she was out of breath and she was screaming, cutting off Lori. And during that moment, of course, both Lori and Summer were crying in the courtroom. Here's part of that call where Summer says, "You were dancing on the beach, having a great time, getting married. You don't think that's upsetting?" Lori responds, "Nobody knows. I'm sorry, honey." Lori says, "I took care of them their whole life." Summer says, "You buried them." Lori says, "I didn't." And then Summer says, "Then come up with an explanation publicly." So in these moments, Lori's crying at her desk with her attorneys, wiping tears, and then Summer's looking down. But then while one portion of the call is played, she glances over to Lori crying and then sort of shakes her head like that in the courtroom. So what a moment for this jury and for this courtroom. And now we expect this afternoon, Ashley, the testimony to turn a little more graphic into like medical examiners taking the stand.
Wow, what a heartbreaking look into how family was feeling during this entire time that they were trying to figure out where are Tylee and JJ. I can't even imagine. And the facial expression you just gave so much insight into maybe the frustration or disgust that she has with her own sister, Vallow Daybell, at this point. All right, Chanley, were there any other testimony highlights that stood out to you?
Right, so before Summer took the stand, we had the FBI analyst who had the painstaking job of graphing out for the jury the Google location data, cell phone pings of Alex, Chad, and Lori during the key dates in this case, the death of Tylee, JJ, and of course Tammy Daybell. So here I summarized it as best I could, the main takeaways of the hours of testimony here, real simple. So basically this expert says that in 2019 in September 9th, that's when Alex Cox's phone is in the vicinity of Chad Daybell's home. Again, that's when they say Tylee was burned and buried there. And there's a multiple communications between Alex, Chad, and Lori during that date. Also September 23rd, again when JJ is alleged to have been buried in the backyard. Alex Cox's phone in the area near the small pond and the center of Chad Daybell's backyard, and a lot of communications between Alex, Chad, and Lori. They also highlight the date of October 9th when Tammy Daybell, they say it was attempted murder, the paintball gun incident, the movements of all three here. That's the day that Chad buys a new burner phone. There's multiple communications between Chad and Lori. Alex Cox's phone is tracked to Lori's apartment and then to his own apartment and then to Sportsman's Warehouse in Idaho Falls before moving back towards Chad Daybell's property. And then by almost 5 o'clock that night, Alex Cox's phone's on the same road as Chad Daybell's home. And then after that, throughout the evening, multiple conversations, communications between Alex, Chad, and Lori. They also highlight the day before Tammy Daybell passed away, all the communications between Alex, Chad, and Lori. 16 at one point between Alex and Chad alone that day before. And then Alex is near a church on Chad's property the evening. This is 10:07 p.m. to 10:45 p.m. before a lot of texts to Lori, and of course Alex Cox's phone traveling back to the area of Chad's home. And they also know Lori's in Hawaii during that time. But all of this together, Judge Ashley, does seem to paint the picture that all three were on the same page, and Alex Cox at the right place at the wrong time. I don't know how we want to phrase that, but wrong place, wrong time, right place, right time, who knows?
And maybe that Alex Cox was doing their bidding, and so we know she's been charged with the murder counts as well as conspiracy. A lot for this jury to consider. Chanley, I know you're going to get back inside that courthouse. Thank you so much for all your great reporting there from Boise, Idaho. Now I'd like to welcome my guest for this hour, forensic psychiatrist Dr. Kara Lieberman and strategic brand crisis attorney Rich Nichols. What a great panel to have on to talk about all of our cases across the country, but specifically this one. So, Dr. Lieberman, as a psychiatrist, forensic psychiatrist rather, tell me if you have any thoughts about what we just learned from Chanley, and that is, you know, Lori Vallow Daybell really has not been crying or very expressive in terms of any sorrow during the trial for the death of her own two children, the murder of her own two children allegedly at her hands. And yet her sister gets on the stand, and now we have the tears flowing. What, if anything, does that say to you?
Well, I think, you know, she was much more affected by the fact that her sister was so upset. It's so interesting. This whole family, Lori's family, obviously was a hotbed of dysfunction. And so it's kind of coming home to her. I think perhaps it has to do with her relationship with her sister before all of this, and her sister saying, "You lied to me."
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, the other thing that I noticed, Rich, that she said was, I've taken care of the children my whole life, or I've taken care of them their whole lives. And Rich, to me, I feel like she is smart about the way she answers questions, because she doesn't answer where are the kids, whether or not she knows where they're buried, if she's done anything to them, but answers that are probably pretty accurate. I've taken care of them their whole lives. Well, that's probably true. I didn't bury them. Well, that could be true. We don't know. So how do you assess what you're hearing in terms of what Lori has said to others?
You know, when you look at this family and their history of dysfunction, if I'm a family member, I'm probably thinking back and trying to remember everything that I possibly observed during these convoluted times. I've never seen a case with such complicated facts and such an entanglement of family members who probably knew what was going on, or probably had a pretty good idea that Lori had some mental health issues that put her kids in jeopardy. And they're all probably feeling right now sorry that they didn't do anything about it, because they might have had an opportunity to save those kids' lives. So if you hear careful testimony, they're probably worried about how they fit in the puzzle, because they're not sure what other testimony is going to be coming about in this trial. So their lawyers have probably cautioned them to step very carefully and to just answer the questions that they're being asked without any elaboration, to hopefully avoid implicating themselves in what is a very complicated, tragic crime.
Boy, what a great point, that implication. And I think that anybody involved in a situation of domestic violence or child abuse and neglect, I feel like they may say, oh, but they would never think, oh, they're going to kill them, right? That's going to happen to those kids. But to your point, who knows what all the relatives really knew about what was going on.